Welcome to the Inside Out podcast. I'm your host, Jojo, and this is where we will navigate the mess together. That is mental, emotional, and spiritual. Let's get into it. So I recorded the Relationship Ruiners episode, and in that episode, I talked about what the 4 relationship ruiners are. I talked about blame, reliance, projection, and expectation. And I gave you guys homework to pick one pattern and track it this week. And I was between 2. I was between projection and expectation, and I ended up choosing projection. So I hit stop on the recording, and literally within minutes, something happened. What happened next, you might ask? Well, it was literally like the universe was like, oh, you want to track projection? So, okay, we're going to give you a live demonstration. Better practice what you preach. We are going to do something a little bit different today. And basically, I'm going to give you a real-time live update on what happened and what actually unfolded. And then I'm going to play you my first ever episode called Roots Before Romance, because after that happened, I realized these 2 episodes are actually telling the same story. Okay, so here's what happened. This is wildly embarrassing, but we're gonna get real. So I was texting back and forth with someone, and the conversation was a little bit tricky to navigate just through messaging. And I was like, you know what? I don't really want to talk about this anymore. And it ended up turning into a phone call. And basically what happened on the phone was I completely misunderstood where this person was at, and what they were telling me was really not what I was hearing. I basically, to not get into the specifics, to protect this person's privacy and all of the things, I basically didn't feel like I was wanted, being thought about, really cared about in a lot of ways, and that something that I had posed to this person was more or less kind of ignored. And when we got on the phone, what I realized is that couldn't be further from the case. This person was just busy. They were occupied with something else. And what I know from this person is that they're A, not a big texter, and B, not someone who's just going to send a response to respond. And history has therefore shown this, but I was projecting. I was looking at this interaction and this human through the lens of my past. I was taking everything that I had been through in my hurt past, what other people had done to me, what other people had said to me, how other people had treated similar situations, and was like, nope, I'm going to look at you right now through this lens of what I've been through. And you know what was even crazier? They caught me in the act of doing that. In the moment, right then and there, and literally called me out. Did I mention this was minutes after I recorded the episode? Hello, thank you, universe, for this beautiful unfoldment and crazy, ironic situation. So they call me out, and I stopped, and I was like, wow, you're so right. And what's even crazier is not only did they call me out, but they said 3 words that were probably the most healing things I've ever heard. Because all I wanted to do in that moment was shut down, run away, and hide, protect myself. I wasn't feeling wanted. Okay, I wasn't going to be wanted. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to keep being there, not being wanted, right? The little girl inside me wanted to just disappear. And I tried. I tried on the text message being like, I just don't want to talk about this anymore. And then I also tried on the phone when I said, you know, it's not a big deal. Never mind, forget about it. And they literally were like, no. And the 3 words that followed were so powerful. And those 3 words were, talk to me. And when this person said those 3 words, I started crying, because it was the first time in any type of relationship where I had felt like I had wanted to run away, forget everything, vanish. And that person had seen that and been like, no, I want to understand where this is coming from and why you're viewing me this way. And then let's dial it back and change this. And I was doing everything. I was projecting everything onto this person that had no bearings, it was so irrational. But this person tried to understand why, where it had come from, why my response was this way. And after really opening it up and being vulnerable and real and realizing what I was doing in real time, in the moment, not like walking away and being like, okay, calming down. No. Exposed, completely vulnerable and out there for this person to see everything, realizing what I had just been doing. So that's the key here, catching it. That's the whole thing. But if I hadn't caught myself, if I hadn't been even aware of this pattern or even having it on my mind, and mind you, minutes before, I probably would have continued to run, continued to respond from the wounded place rather than stay on the phone, continue to have the conversation, and get real. I would have created distance where there didn't need to be any. And I would have essentially made this person pay for the wounds that they didn't cause. And that, like staying in that, that's where the work is. It's not about being perfect. It's not about having the projection not come up. It's about catching it. It's about being aware enough to say, whoa. Is this like real? Are they actually not wanting me there? Or is it just my wound? Is it just my stuff? So when I named it out loud, it completely took away its power. When I was honest and real with this person and said, this is why I'm doing this, it made it so insignificant in a way. And that projection couldn't control me anymore because I started to see it for what it really was. Now, here's why I'm telling you this story. What happened on that phone call is exactly what I talk about in my first episode. First ever episode of this podcast that started everything, called Roots Before Romance. And in that episode, I talked about planting seeds, about how relationships aren't built overnight, about how you can't just meet someone and expect a castle to appear. You have to build a foundation. And projection, the one I chose this week, projection is what happens when you skip the foundation. It's what happens when you see someone through the filter of your past instead of seeing them for who they actually are. When you water the seed too much, pull apart all the petals, and hover over that plant instead of just letting it grow, that's where everything falls apart. So after that phone call, I thought, you know what? I think people need to hear this first episode again because it's all connected. The relationship ruiners, blame, reliance, projection, expectation, they all come from the same place. They come from not doing the inner work. And they come from basically trying to build a castle on a plot of land that has no foundation. So Roots Before Romance is about building that foundation. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play you that first episode right now. My very, very first episode. And like I said, it's the one that started this whole journey. I want you to listen to it with the understanding of what you know now. Listen to it through the lens of the 4 relationship ruiners. And if you chose the same one that I did, listen to it through the lens of projection. So when we come back, we will break it down mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. But without further ado, here it is, the first episode of Inside Out. This week I wanted to talk about relationships. I think it's one of the most discussed topics in the podcasting space and probably just in everyday life. But I wanted to approach this a little differently, and I wanted to actually talk about the start of a relationship, or when you meet someone that you're interested in, or even just how a healthy foundation is built. I think the modern dating world is really a little bit of a mind warp, if you will, because we have all of the accessibility of dating apps and people's pictures and Google. I think it's very rare that people meet in the wild anymore. I mean, it definitely happens, don't get me wrong, but even so, you can still go home and search their social medias or look them up. And there's something that I wanted to dive into there, because that's such a trap sometimes, because then we can see someone, we can be attracted to them, and then all of a sudden we're like running with a narrative of what their life looks like and what they do and how that fits in before you've even established any sort of foundation with them, or even maybe even had a conversation or built any connection, and right now it's just attraction and this crazy narrative that we're running away with. I've definitely been guilty of this, and I for sure know that my friends have through conversations I've had with them, that we'll meet someone, right? And you're attracted to them. Maybe you have a conversation. Maybe you've met on a dating app. Maybe you've met at a bar. Maybe you've met somewhere out in the wilds, like Whole Foods. Just throwing out options here. And there's an attraction, right? And then maybe you get their name or their social media, and then you look them up and you're like, oh, okay. And then you start potentially running with this narrative of like what they do and like making up maybe a story of like what their life looks like. Now, this is where a lot of people get stuck. And I see this happen a lot with girlfriends, and I've definitely fallen into this trap where before you even get to know the person and have any sort of idea of who they are, you're creating a fairy tale in your head. And I know we don't like to look at this. I know that this is like, oh, dang, I do that. Yep. Yes, Jojo, I definitely do this. We all do it. And that's fine. But this is why we get hurt, because we make up an entire story in our head before we have any clue who this person is. And specifically Matthew Hussey, he has this book called Love Life, and he talks about the 4 C's, and it's chemistry, connection, compatibility, commitment. Now, you can meet someone and be attracted to them and then be like, oh, we have chemistry, we really get along. And then you can be like, are we compatible? Do we like the same things? Are we in the same area? Are we in the same places in our lives? Are we both interested in maybe similar lifestyles? Maybe one person likes to go out and drink really heavily, and the other person is like, I want to be active. That's not going to be a compatible relationship. You might really like each other and be really interested in each other, but like at the end of the day, if someone's going out partying all night and the other person wants to get up and take a hike in the morning, your lives are not in parallel. So that's compatibility. And then there's commitment. Now, this is where people get all sorts of backwards. We find someone that we like. Oh my gosh, there's chemistry. We get along really well. And then we ignore the rest of it. And we jump straight to this fairy tale. And we've built this castle, so to speak, and this story and this narrative in our head that has no foundation to actually show us that this is really a good investment of our time, the right person for us. There's literally no foundation. It's just like, wow, I found this thing. This is not from me, by the way. This is literally written in a book by Matthew Hussey, where he says your date that you're on is like when you go and you want to buy a piece of land and then you like want to build a house. It's like you bought the land and all of a sudden you just expect there to be a castle there. It's not how it works. There's stages to this castle, but we in our heads see the plot of land, see the person, and we're like, oh my God, he has a great job, he's a traveler, whatever it is that we like run away with. And then all of a sudden, we've been on 3 or 4 dates, and then we're like, oh, he's not texting me back. Oh my gosh. We run away with this thing and we're getting, so to speak, heartbroken or really invested in something that it was just our brains the entire time running away with this story. Now, this is where we need to put the brakes on ourselves. I'm only speaking from the female lens here. I do know that men also do this, probably not to the same extremes that us girlies do it, but we are guilty of this. At least once in our lives, we've done this. We've seen someone and we've like run away with the story and been like, oh my God, that's our husband or something ridiculous. And we're like, we don't even know them. And then of course there's the crash and it's like, no. So I wanted to offer a different way in and maybe give a little bit more of a perspective shift, because I think it's so easy for us to get so wrapped up in that initial chemistry or whatever
And then it's all that energy of the wave. It's like you see a wave and it has all this energy. And then as it reaches the shore, it loses momentum and it sort of crashes. And then there's no more wave. And then another wave comes. And that's what I've seen with my girlfriends, with friends, with people I know in stories. And you see it all the time where there's all this momentum, all this energy, and all of a sudden it just dissipates. And you're like, what? Where did this go? Oh my God. Why does this keep happening? So what I want to offer is maybe this is happening because of this internal narrative and dialogue that we expect something to be a certain way. And I'm going to use these terms really loosely because I don't mean this in like a narcissistic type of way, but it's almost like if someone is pursuing you so hard in the beginning, like in that love bomby kind of way, again, I don't mean it in that actual term because that is a negative term, but if someone is well, maybe it is a negative thing, but if someone is pursuing you so hardcore and they have no idea who you are, they don't know your beliefs, your morals, your values, your core, your anything. They're just like, I see a pretty shiny light and I'm interested and I'm going to just like chase this like shiny object until I realize, oh no, not really interested anymore. And again, you see this all the time, but if that's like the first initial, there's no room for ebb and flow. You're going to always expect it to be like so full force and so on. And that's a lot. That's not sustainable. A few years ago, I met someone and we immediately clicked. We were together all the time. It was very fast and furious in the sense of we started spending all our time together. Again, not love bomby, but just very intense, very soon. And there wasn't that foundation. It was the flowers and the dinners and the extra long hours spent together. And I mean, it was a lot, but it wasn't sustainable. And inevitably, once that understanding and really getting to know each other started to happen, we realized we are not compatible at all. The way we communicate is so different. So it's like we went from chemistry to commitment with nothing else in between. And that castle, my God, it crumbled. And it crumbled fast. It crumbled within months. And in that can be very hard because you're like, oh my God, they were doing all these things and they stopped. And you start to really understand who that person is. And you're like, wait a second, I didn't sign up for this. And I think that's pretty challenging for a lot of us because that feeds into our limiting beliefs of I'm not enough and like no one's ever going to pick me or I'm never going to find my person or our fear of rejection. This can perpetuate this cycle so much because we expect, again, expectations. Like we expect someone to be showing up 100% when they know us 0%. I mean, this is also what Disney and Hollywood and all of the things have kind of created. If the story is so intense and it's such a push-pull, the story is never going to have a good ending. You want like that really balanced, true, authentic connection. It takes work and it takes time. And yes, okay, there are the stories of people that meet and then they're together for 60 years for the rest of their lives. And they knew immediately and it was instant and they just clicked and the end. Let's also remember how much society has changed, how much the digital age has changed, how much dating has changed, how accessibility is different, how people are actually learning more and doing more around the dating, around mental health, around all of these things. And our grandparents, while it is a beautiful thing and it is possible still today for sure, it's not the norm. And the norm is we meet someone on a dating app or we meet them in the wild and then all of a sudden like we're together all the time and all of this stuff. And then you hear about the fade out or the fizzle or the crash and the burn. That's really where things go sideways for us, for them, for everyone involved, for our friends that have to hear about it for the next 900 days because we don't shut up about it. And this is where I want to shift all of it. So I was talking to a friend recently. They shared something with me that really hit home. And it was such a beautiful analogy and metaphor that I really wanted to share this because I think this is a beautiful way to think about how relationships really are built. When you plant a seed and you expect it to grow, you don't stare at it You don't keep watering it every 45 seconds. You don't hover over it. You plant the seed, you give it light, you give it space, you give it sun, you give it the adequate amount of water, and you go and you cut the dead leaves when they come, you trim it, you take care of it and you nurture it, but you let it be. You're not up on that plant all the time. And then when the flower grows, you're not like pulling apart all the petals and like examining every little detail. The same thing when you start a relationship. You plant a seed, you plant a foundation or an intention of, I want to get to know this person. But that doesn't mean you're texting back and forth 24/7. They have their own lives. You guys are two different people with your own friends, lives, jobs, families, interests, hobbies. The list goes on. If you're like too much all at once, that it's not even something yet, you're going to drown it. If I'm watering my plant too much, it's just going to die. So when you step back after you've planted that seed in a relationship and you give it time, you give it the space, you do talk, you check in, you really get to know each other and you build that foundation. You find that plot of land, you get the right pieces, you build the house, you build the castle, and you make sure that like you really are getting to know the person. To go back to those 4 C's, the chemistry is the seed's planted. Now comes in connection. We have a really strong foundation of communication and trust and whatever. And then there's compatibility. Same stages in life. You might really like each other, but are you compatible? And getting to know those parts and not running away with the story before the story's even written. We love to write the story in our head. We never let the story unfold without control. So what happens if we just release? Yeah, that's terrifying. The unknown is freaky. I get it. I'm there. I'm with you guys. 100%. So I'm talking about this. But how boring is a book if you pick it up and you read the last page? There's no point. You already know what happens. And also with expectations, and if you already know the direction your life's going, there's no room for excitement, for spontaneity, for growth, for change, for transformation, for adjusting, for play, for just anything that's out of the ordinary. And I can't tell you, just on a personal note, how many times I've planned something like a date or anything, and it just, it doesn't work out. It doesn't like go to plan. The best times I've ever had with anyone is when it's just spur of the moment and you just flow. We're so rigid these days. We're so wanting to control and hold on and what's this doing and where's this going and and we don't just let it be. Again, 1,000,000% guilty. I can't sit here and say like, I don't do this because I 1,000% do it, but it's the mental gymnastics that you have to do with yourself in order to not continue in these cycles. Because what's the alternative? You're just going to fall back into the same repetitive cycles that we already know. We already know they don't work. Maybe they work for the 1%. But what I do know is there is a different way to think about this, to reframe this, and to have this unfold. So once that seed's planted and that flower grows, and you give it the water, the sun, the space, the time, the air, the room to breathe, then you can really see, is this a flower that I like? There's this beautiful quote that I found by Dr. Bolu. I think Jay Shetty was the one that posted it, but it's originally from Dr. Bolu. And it says, when people fall in love with someone's flowers, but not their roots, they don't know what to do when autumn comes. Your relationships need to be built on deep alignment on values, character, morals, which are the roots. Not just love, appearance, hobbies, status, which are the flowers. I'm not sure if that resonates with anyone, but for me, it really signifies where we get stuck and also how we get stuck and how we run away with these stories that just keep us in the same feedback loop. Because now when you really take time and you step back and you don't run away with a story, and this is where the work is. This is where the mess starts. The mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of all of this really come into play. And this is where we get healthier with our approach in. Because again, it's not really about them. And I want to make that so clear. Everything that I say is not a projection on what anyone else does. It's a reflection on how we are in our lives and how we can really go inside and create the life that we want on the outside. And if we're not breaking these things down and really understanding or reflecting or changing the patterns in our lives that don't work, we're never going to get different results. This is hard. To change in real time is hard because we can tell ourselves all day long, when I meet someone, I'll do this. No. You can tell yourself that as much as you want. The most important thing is when that person's standing in front of you. That's when it gets hard. And that's when you have to implement it. And it's so easy not to implement it. It's so easy to go back to those same patterns of, oh, I just want to text them. I want to like have constant communication. I just want to blah, blah, blah. No, stop, pause, wait, reactive. No, we're not doing that. Because that's not sustainable. Because then what? If they have a busy day at work, what is that going to feed? Your same narrative of like, I'm not enough. Oh, they don't like me. It just feeds our insecurities. And then it's like the chase and the pullback and all this stuff because it's not natural. I realized something recently too, and I'm not a big texter, but if I like someone, I obviously like want to talk to them all the time. Like I think that's very human and very natural. But it's fighting that urge to do that because that's the waterboarding. That's drowning that seed. That's like the too much, too soon, too fast when you don't even know each other and that's not even earned yet. It's like you're trying to like make a relationship without any work. Without any foundation, without any knowledge of the person or who they are, really, truly. But also, if we're being honest with ourselves and we send a text to someone we like or we're talking to or we're dating and they don't respond, and that triggers that feedback loop of, well, what are they doing? Maybe they're like not interested. We got to look at that. And then we have to really do the inner work to get that limiting belief or that negative thought out because that's just going to happen every single time that they are busy and have a busy day or like they're exhausted and they just don't have the mental capacity, whatever it is. I mean, yes, everyone can take 2 seconds and communicate, but having that expectation that someone should show up for you the way that you think they should is just a dead end disaster. How many times have you sent a text to a friend and it takes them a couple days to get back and you don't sweat it at all? You're like, yeah, well, that's just them. Like, I'm going to hear from them eventually. Hello? Like, why don't we give that same grace, space, and acknowledgement to the person we're talking to? They do not owe us anything. This is the beginning. Like your best friends might not respond to you for 5 days and like you're fine with it. You're like, oh, I get it. They have a life. Okay, so does your person. So does your partner. So does the guy that you like or the girl you like. Everyone has their lives. You can't just expect the minute that you meet someone for them to be all up about you. They don't know you. You don't know them. Stop writing a silly story that has no basis in reality. Really get to know them and chill. Take a beat. Take a hard beat and stop yourself in your tracks and be like, yo, it's cool. I don't know you. And I'm not writing a silly story that's going to hurt me later on down the road. Because how many times do you actually like get to know someone? You're like, actually, we're just not compatible. You're good with it because you know it's just not it. So give yourself that same exact compassion and grace to do that with someone that, yeah, you might be really attracted to them. You might have great chemistry. You might have a really strong connection. Okay, well, let's make sure the other C's are there. Compatibility, commitment. And if you're the one just writing a silly story and running away with the narrative, you're creating false expectations and you're only ever going to be let down by it. In those beginning phases, you really get to know if you're just getting attention or if there is intention, because someone can text you all day long and it just is that feedback loop of attention, but they're not being intentional. They're not actually putting out anything or building anything. It's just like, oh, I did this or oh, I did. It's like, it's kind of just like a pen pal. Are they being intentional with your time? Are they actually investing in you? Is it talking and action? That's another thing that we just completely throw out the window when we meet someone that we're attracted to and we like. We don't actually take the time to be like, oh, are they being intentional? Oh my God, I'm getting all the attention, but are they being intentional? And are they putting in the action that they are saying with their words? Like, are they actually aligned? Because another thing is someone can future bomb us when someone is like, oh, we'll do this at this date, or we'll go here in this time, or, oh, I can't wait for you to like see where I grew up. And it's like, wait a second, hold on. You're planting seeds for the future, but there's no foundation in the present. And we get so stuck in that when there's no action. Did they call you and they said they would? Are there talk and actions lining up in the present day? Or are you just holding out because they said something they were going to do in the future? Get real with yourself. Look at it. Really unpack it. It's not going to be comfortable. And it shouldn't be, because you're breaking patterns, you're breaking cycles. And anytime you do something new, it's the unknown and it's scary. We're so used to the familiar and we're so used to what we've always done and what we know that it's so easy to go back to that, to, oh, I'm just going to text him, or, oh, he's not responding, so I'm just going to call him, or I'm just going to, no, stop. Put your phone down, take a beat, and figure out why you're doing this. Because if it's coming from lack and the scarcity mindset of, oh my God, they're not, then no, we're ending that right here today, right now. I went into a relationship with someone, amazing person, but I went into that relationship from lack. And it was because the previous relationship that I was in, I was so deprived of intention, commitment, all the things, that once someone showed me what I really wanted and what I was lacking so much, it almost didn't matter who they were. It was that's what they were bringing to the table. And because I was in so much lack, that seed that was planted was a negative seed. And what grew in that relationship was only lack, because I went into it from lack, which doesn't breed any sort of healthy relationship. And unfortunately, because of that, it caused a lot of pain in a lot of ways. If I had just done the work before and knew that this was not a healthy, balanced way to enter a relationship, I wouldn't have done it. And we all make mistakes and there's trial and error. And I'm not saying that relationship was a mistake or that anything that happened was a mistake. I see it as a blessing. I see it as a beautiful way through life and learning. But it brought me here today to be able to be like, well, let's shift this. What is the positive seed that we can plant? If you're just looking to fill a lack and get that energy and get that quick fix, that dopamine hit, I would advise you to sit down and fill your own cup. Build out your life so that when they're not responding, when life is lifing, that you're not repeating those negative thought patterns and cycles in yourself, thus maybe projecting them onto that person and creating something that just didn't need to be there in the first place. Because let's say they didn't talk to you for a week and then they finally reach out and you're like, hello, where have you been? And there's that like tinge of whatever, like negativity, or you're just like resentful. No, you have a life, you have friends, you have hobbies, you have interests, you have a career, you have things that you're doing. Fill it, do it, live it. Choose yourself. If you don't choose yourself, no one's going to choose you. You've heard that a million times. I know. I'm serious. Like if you don't fill your life and then they talk to you or whatever, and they have a busy week or whatever it is. And I'm not saying like this is what happens in a relationship. I'm saying like in the beginning of a relationship or just like getting to know someone or whatever. But you better have had stuff going on for yourself that you weren't just sitting there waiting for them, because that person's not going to be like, that's hot. Yeah, she's got nothing going on. Cool. No, literally, absolutely not. They're going to feel needed, like icky. They're going to feel that pushback because it's like, hold on, why do you need, like, what? You're your own person. What did you do before me? And honestly, what we probably did before them was put all of our lack in someone else and tried to fill that with someone else. Maybe, who knows? I've definitely done it. That's why you always hear love yourself before you love someone else, because you really do have to love your life and you really do have to have a life. Because otherwise, what are you just going to attach and glob onto someone else's and then expect them to just like be the source of your life? Let's get back to ourselves. Let's really focus on how we can do the work and not be like, well, they're not talking to me and they don't care and they don't. No, I want someone to count how many times I said no this episode. It starts from the inside out. So let's break it down in the mess. Mental. We talked about it, right? We get really clear on our lives, what we want, being really intentional, planting a healthy seed, not coming from lack, being really solid, and not running away with a story or a narrative. Emotionally, not getting attached to that narrative, just understanding, okay, I'm interested in this person, but then letting it unfold and letting it be a natural ebb and flow and give and take, and watering that seed and taking a step back and not pulling apart the flower and analyzing every little petal. You're going to look at the rose and be like, oh my God, it just destroyed it. Don't do that to your relationship. Emotionally fill yourself. And spiritually, it's rewiring these patterns. It's going into those places and figuring out how we can change these patterns and these thoughts. I think another little key tidbit is we get caught up in the story when we start telling our friends, oh my God, he did this, or oh my God, they did that. And you start romanticizing it and repeating it and playing it out and telling everyone. What happens if you just zipped your mouth? Yeah, I'm talking to someone, getting to know them. And you just didn't let this story run rampant in your brain and having to tell everyone every step of the way. And we just let it unfold instead of, hearing our friends' feedback and, oh my gosh, and wow, I can't believe he this or whatever. It's like, honestly, if you don't hear from this person for a few days and you told your friend that, they're probably going to be like, oh my God, well, that's crazy. Like, he doesn't even like you. And then now you're telling yourself a whole story that's probably so untrue. And he's probably just having his life or doing his thing. And he will talk to you, or they will talk to you when they talk to you. And also, you could be the one that's just like, I'm busy. Like, I'll get to it when I get to it. It's not because you don't like the person. It's just because, again, you have a life. So have a life and have a full life. Spiritually, doing this work and really pulling yourself back and understanding these cycles, and again, not coming from lack and really letting it be, will change a lot for you. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, we just need to realign and reframe everything that we put out, how we communicate, how we show up, and really just let things flow without control, without needing answers, and just letting things be. Because if you really do believe in this like I do, what is meant for you will never pass you by. What is meant for you will always be for you. And no matter what, you can't ever really control anything. And if you put expectations on anything, you're going to be let down because things happen. Life happens. And especially when you bring expectations and project them on someone else, it's when things really fall apart, because how are they ever going to be able to fulfill anything? You should set expectations for how you show up and how you are for yourself. Expectation on you is fine. Expectations on someone else, that's where we get really, really stuck.
That was Ruth Before Romance. And that was recorded about 1.5 years ago. And listening to that again, after everything that's happened, after the Relationship Ruiners episode, after that phone call and catching myself in real time, it kind of just hits different, at least for me. And here's what I realized. All 4 of those relationship ruiners, blame, reliance, projection, expectation, they're all symptoms of the same problem. They're all what happens when you completely skip the roots and go straight to the flowers. When you blame someone for how they feel, you're expecting them to be responsible for your roots, your foundation, for your healing. And when you rely on someone to complete you, you're trying to build a castle on their plot of land instead of your own, or my new thing, finding a plot of land for the 2 of you to build. Because I want to get into this in another episode, but you shouldn't just merge 2 worlds. It should be 3. Your world, their world, and your shared world. So, build it on a mutual plot of land that you both own. When you project your past onto them, you're not even seeing the seed in front of you. You're seeing a completely different plant entirely. You're seeing your ex. You're seeing your mom. You're seeing whatever the situation is, your teacher. And when you hold unspoken expectations, when you don't communicate your needs, you're demanding that the flowers bloom exactly how you want them to on your timeline without giving it space to naturally grow. Guys, none of this actually works when you do it like that. None of it builds a sustainable and healthy relationship. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, that's what we all are looking for. So what I want to leave you with today is, if you're in the early stages of getting to know someone, whether that's romantically, a new friendship, whatever it is, ask yourself. Or if you've had lifelong friends, still ask yourself this: am I watering the seed or am I drowning it? And even if it's a well-established relationship, You can still pivot. You can still make the change in real time. You can still choose differently. And ask yourself, are you giving it space to grow? Or are you hovering over it, analyzing every little detail, pulling apart all the petals to see if it's right? Are you seeing that person for who they actually are? Or are you seeing them through the filter of who hurt you before? And if you catch yourself doing any of those things, any of the blame, reliance, projection, expectation, don't beat yourself up. Just notice it. Name it. And then you can choose differently in that moment. That's what I did on that phone call. I noticed it. I named it. And I ended up choosing to respond from awareness instead of woundedness. And that shifted everything. There's something I heard once that I just want to bring back quickly. That is, I'm going to butcher this quote, but it's along the lines of, the person who's stronger is the one that falls and catches themselves versus the one that never falls at all. And if you are falling, and by that I mean catching, like actually doing these patterns, but catching yourself, that's where growth happens. So don't beat yourself up for it. Okay, let's get messy with this. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Mentally, where are you still writing stories that haven't been written yet? And what I mean by that is, where are you projecting your past relationships onto your present person? Where are you expecting someone to show up for you in ways you haven't even communicated? Get honest. Maybe write it down. Name that pattern. Writing is so powerful. I highly suggest it. Emotionally, what would you feel if you stopped projecting? If you stopped expecting? If you actually let someone show you who they are instead of just assuming they're going to be like everyone else who hurt you before? Would you feel vulnerable? Exposed, out of control? I dare you to sit with that discomfort, because on the other side of that discomfort is real connection. And that's what I also experienced on the phone. Spiritually, what if, seriously though, what if the right person doesn't need you to perform? What if they don't need you to prove yourself or water that seed 24/7 or pull apart all the petals to make sure it's perfect? What if you trusted that when you plant a healthy seed, when you show up whole, aware, and responsible, the right relationship will grow naturally? And to that same point, what if the wrong relationships fall away? Not because you're not enough, but because they're not aligned. Can you trust that? All right, friends. Here's your homework for this week. If you haven't listened fully through the Relationship Ruiners episode, go back and listen to it. Pick one of the patterns and track it. Notice what comes up. Notice what story you're telling yourself. And then choose differently in the moment. That's the work, you guys. That's how we break the cycles. And if you want to share what you're noticing, feel free to DM me on Instagram @_insideout.podcast, or leave a comment on my Substack, DM me on Substack, because I do want to hear from you. Because this work, we're doing it together. So you guys know where to find me, again, @_insideout.podcast, Substack, everything's linked in the show notes. And if this episode helped you see something you hadn't seen before, share it with 3 people, because I guarantee you that there's someone in your life that needs to hear this right now. All right, guys, have a beautiful week. See you next Wednesday. Bye.